Back when I was figuring out what kind of gear I needed to be able to create commercials, small ad campaigns, and content for other brands, I didn't know how people achieved such a great level of quality, and I really didn't know which camera, lens, filter or anything I should get to achieve similar results. So throughout my time, I've bought a lot of stupid stuff to try and figure out what kind of camera gear that would help me achieve some of the more cinematic results I was looking for. So let me show you the camera gear I use every day. The gear I use on a daily basis is by no means cheap, so if you're looking for some great entry-level gear, this video might not be for you. You see, I usually have a somewhat unpopular opinion regarding gear, which is that it's better to buy the right piece of gear the first time around, rather than buying the cheap option first and then 6 months later you'll have to upgrade again. That is just my opinion. So for the most part, I've tried to buy the right gear for the job the first time around. It haven't always worked, but I've tried. On a daily basis, I use 2 cameras. My main camera is the Sony FX3, and the lens that pretty much lives on the camera is the Sigma 16-28 f2.8. This camera and lens combo is what I use to record around 80% of my videos here on YouTube. Out on a job, it's more likely that I use my big Sigma 70-200 f2.8 lens on the camera, since it offers much more compression in the image and it also makes the subject look much better simply because it widens the face a little bit, which is something the 16-28 definitely doesn't. With the 16-28 lens, you kinda always look a bit slimmer than you actually are, which often looks a bit weird. But the main reason for using the 16-28 is because you can stand super close to the camera and still capture a lot of the surroundings. This is also great if you usually use a shotgun microphone on the camera, since the closer you are to the microphone, the more crisp and clear the sound will be. So it's a great lens for YouTube. I would have loved a little more range out of it, but I really didn't think that double the price to get the Sony G Master was worth the money for just a little bit more range. So I'm sticking with the Sigma version for now. The reasons I think the Sony FX3 is the ultimate camera for video is because you can record footage until you run out of battery or out of storage, because it has a built-in fan. So compared to a lot of other cameras, you won't ever have to deal with overheating issues, which is something I have struggled with on my Sony a7 IV in the past, especially when I filmed for other creators in the heat or if I've had some long interviews. Another great feature of the FX3 is of course the tally lights, which lights up whenever you're recording. But ever since I bought this camera monitor from Portkeys, it really haven't been that big of an issue to see if I'm recording or not. Even with my Sony a7 IV, simply because you can connect the camera monitor directly to the camera, and then it also has a big red border, just like the one you can set up within the camera settings. The monitor is called Portkeys LH7P, and it has all the features a camera monitor should have. Everything from peaking, zebras, false color, waveforms and so on. But the main reason I got this one was actually because it's possible for you to control a lot of the features from the camera directly on the monitor. So it's great that you don't need to always pull out the small screen on the camera to dial in your settings, like your white balance as an example. This is definitely gonna be great if I ever decide to rig it out with a lot of gear someday. I don't feel like I need to have a big V-mount battery connected to the camera, so I usually just use some big batteries from small rig on the monitor, and then I just use the normal NPF batteries for the camera housing. And this generally keeps the weight down. I actually really like to have the camera set up rather small all the time, so 90% of the time it's set up with the monitor, camera body and lens like this, and possibly together with an ND filter whenever I'm recording outside, but not that much more. Everything I record with both my Sony a7 IV and the FX3 is shot in S-Log-free, S-Gamut-free Cine. I really love this picture profile because it gives you 15 stops of dynamic range, so you can easily fix a lot of the footage in the post process. And it also makes it super easy to color grade and get a great looking image. without any bending. But this is not only due to shooting in log, but also because of the 10-bit 422 color space I've set it up to within the camera. If you have a camera like this and you're not using the 10-bit color, then turn it on immediately because it makes a world of a difference. And it's really something you'll notice if your work has to be seen on some color accurate monitors or just TVs. Inside the camera I have a somewhat overlooked piece of equipment, and that's the actual storage or SD cards. Because I mainly use some super expensive CF Express Type A cards for the cameras, and though it's not as sexy as a camera or a lens, I'm actually really happy that I decided to upgrade to them a couple of months ago. They make it possible for me to get the most out of my camera, since it's possible to record in the largest codec within the camera body. XAVC, SDCI, 4K. Another great feature of the cards is that they enable the high-speed photo mode to go even faster than what you can with normal SD cards. But the main reason I got them was actually just because I hated to wait for it to offload the video files to the computer. This now goes 3 times faster since they have a speed of 900 megabytes per second, read and write. It kinda just makes it easier for me to get the footage off the camera fast, so I can record again because I kinda only have 2 of these cards since they are super expensive. At least these ones from Lexa is a bit cheaper than Sony's own. I have looked at the 1TB versions from Angelbird since it seems like you would get a lot for your money. But the price tag is still really just something else. So for now I have to do with these 160GB Lexa CF Express Type A cards. As mentioned a few times already, I also have a Sony a7 IV camera housing. I don't use it as much as the Sony FX3, and this is mainly due to the fact that it's only full frame up till 60 FPS. Everything above that is in APS-C with a 1.6 times crop. So everything that's supposed to be in slow motion and that's supposed to get speed ramped will not be in as great quality. It's still great, but not as great. So I mainly use the camera to get some behind the scenes footage, or as a second camera for a few scenarios with some interviews or something along those lines. However, almost every single picture I capture is shot with this camera, and that's mainly due to the fact that it has a viewfinder as well as a 33 megapixel sensor, whereas the FX3 has no viewfinder and only a 12 megapixel sensor. So if you crop into your photo in post, it'll be much clearer with the Sony a7 IV. So the a7 IV is not the main camera for video, but it's a great full frame hybrid camera. The camera is probably obsolete to the Sony a7C Mark II by now, but 3 years ago when I bought it, it was great and it still holds up quite great, so I'm not getting rid of it anytime soon. The ND filter I use is this Nisi True Color Variable ND filter that has 1 to 5 stops. It keeps everything really rather true to its original color, which just does that you have less to actually do in post to fix the color, which is always nice. For my Sony a7 IV, I had a kit lens, which I used in the start, and I actually quite fast bought a variable ND filter for. That ND filter is also from Nisi, but it is by no means super great. It also seems to have a rather greenish tint, which is a little bit hard to work with in post. But it fits well on my everyday photo lens, the Samyang 24mm f2.8, as well as the kit lens, which has a range of 28 to 70, f3.5 to f5.6. But I actually never use the kit lens anymore because it's rather annoying to have a lens that shifts its aperture depending on how much you zoom. For those of you who are wondering what an ND filter does to your footage, then I'll say that it's basically sunglasses for your camera and lens. It makes it possible to have a really open aperture outside, which is the shallow depth of field that blurs out the background. I have a lot of different microphones, and I actually most of the time have all of them with me on a shoot, simply because they have different purposes and can be used in a lot of different scenarios. My most used microphone is the ECM B1M from Sony, which connects through the hot shoe of the camera housing. And it also draws power from the camera itself. This is super useful since you then don't need to have any cables hanging from the side of the camera. The microphone also has a directional audio feature, so you can choose for it to pick up the sound right in front of it, which is so useful for vlogs. The rest of the features on the microphone I actually never use, since I found that auto really functions quite great in almost every scenario. I do switch the directional audio feature sometimes, depending on the situation. If I need to move far away from the camera, then the DJI mic wireless microphones are a great option that I just clip onto my shirt or my subject shirt somewhere. But I tend to only use it for my own content, since I don't feel like the sound quality is up there for client projects. The newest addition to my camera arsenal is this microphone from Sennheiser, the Sennheiser MKE600. I use it exclusively to my FX3 camera, since it's connected through an XLR cable, and the handle that comes with the FX3 actually has an input for an XLR cable. I don't have a lot of massive productions yet, so usually it's quite fine for me to just use this hybrid tripod from Benro. The Benro Cyanbird carbon fiber is what it's called. It can hold up to 4.5 kilos, so you can put a lot of weight on it. So even whenever I put my massive 70-200mm f2.8 lens on it, doesn't have any problems at all. Another great thing is that since it's made of carbon fiber, then it simply doesn't weigh anything at all. It only weighs about 1 kilo, which is really insane. The legs can go up to 90 degrees out and you can take off the bottom, so it's super easy to get low to the ground. The tool to adjust a lot of the screws on the tripod is also embedded into the bottom, which is great. The only thing I don't like is the bracket that comes with the tripod, because it has a tendency to get loose and you really don't want your camera to fall off your tripod ever. I found a bracket that sits way better on the tripod. It's from PGY and came with the shoulder strap that I bought for my camera a little while ago. It's a lot slimmer, so it locks way better. It is, however, nice that it both have a ball head as well as a tilt function. Though this tripod is a nice option, I'm really looking forward to buying the tripod from Small Rig, which they've made in collaboration with Potato Jet, where there's just a simple grip to control all the positions. Because if you adjust your tripod a lot, it gets quite annoying having to open and close one part of the leg at a time. So probably sometime in the near future, I'll be switching this one out. I also always bring a gimbal to any kind of shoot I do, simply because I might need some ultra stable footage. I tend to go with more handheld or tripod shots these days, but it's nice to have some different options available if needed. The gimbal I have is an RS3, not the Pro, but since I mainly don't have the biggest cameras and I also don't rig it that massively, then it's more than enough for my needs. Apart from having cameras in my bag, then one of my most used tools are actually this little Mini 4 Pro drone from DJI, which I use all the time. Clients often want some sort of establishing shot for their commercials, and here it's great to just pull out this small drone. I don't feel like upgrading right here and now, since it's such a small amount I use it on actual projects. So since I most of the time use it for fun activities like YouTube, it's not worth upgrading in my opinion. The bigger it gets, the more rules and regulations also comes, and I already don't like dealing with it right now with this drone, so I'm probably gonna hate a bigger drone. The great thing about the Mini 4 Pro is that it has a lot of intelligent features, like a waypoints feature that makes it possible to set up a couple of positions. And then it can easily go from point to point and film everything in between. This is a great way to film yourself, and I've used it countless times. The tracking features are also great when filming yourself, but I've actually realized that the feature I use the most isn't actually a feature and is actually something a lot of drones can do. But it's simply just flying up to head level and then just using the drone kind of like a camera standing on a tripod. So just a stationary shot where I'm walking in the frame. Simple, yet effective. I also really like that it has D-Lock M, so the color grade sticks a bit better. It's super nice that they've added that to the Mini 4 Pro, because that wasn't on the Mini 3 Pro. Just something to note if you are looking to buy one. I found that a drone is something you either use a lot or not at all. But the only way to figure out which category you fall into is simply just to try a drone out. The bag I'm using is the Loaf Pro BP AW3, and it's quite fine for now. But when I'm beginning to get some bigger jobs, I'm definitely gonna have to upgrade to some hard cases, but it's not first on the list of things to buy right now. So that'll wait. I'm also just a videographer, so my overall cinematography understanding ain't that big yet. I'm practicing almost every day, so I'm getting better, but it's still not that great. So the light I'm using for 95% of my shoots is this Amaran 200B S version with a huge aperture light dome free attached to it. And I've almost never felt the need to get something else, because most of the time I use it at a low percentage of brightness anyway, so I don't feel like I need a brighter and stronger one. Then I of course have some other minor accessories, chargers, batteries, step-up rings, cables and stuff like that, but it's not that interesting, so we'll skip that. So this is pretty much all the stuff I bring with me whenever I have a shoot for a client. It's a little different when I'm making videos here, since it all depends on where I'm going or how the final video is supposed to look and feel. But for the most part, I just use my FX3 with the 16-28 Sigma lens. So yeah. Hope you liked the video. If so, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and subscribe to my channel down below. And then see you in the next one. I'm out.